Rochford Files. It's on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live, and I just added Twitter to, especially after viewing the early analytics from the first week and a half of the show. I saw most of my viewership come from Facebook, but Twitter is the place where I have my biggest following right now. Over 3,600 followers, but the third lowest platform. So yeah, that's why I decided to add Twitter into the mix. Got a pretty big show today since I skipped out on Wednesday. But I did, sir. But with the second Pfizer vaccine, I survived for both, just feeling a bit of tiredness. So I'm glad because one of the biggest fears is the symptoms that you get following the vaccine. And certain people have had some really aggressive symptoms like headaches. It's like you get the mini sickness you're trying to avoid. And after starting out off the year dealing with on and off vertigo, headaches, I was very glad to only come out of it both times just feeling a bit tired. So I was glad that I didn't get part of the natural selection for more aggressive symptoms. But let me get a bit of promote this a bit of promote the show a bit before I really dive in. So on today's show, it'll be a mix of some stories that I would have covered Wednesday, along with the newer stuff that mainly happened yesterday and this morning. But I think I've got a good flow set up to it. And I'm eventually going to work on getting more guests once I start to see a bit more channel growth. But for now, I'll probably be doing a bit more solo streams until I see that happen, or unless some of my current following on Twitter shows more interest in that. In being a guest. Let's see if Facebook will call me out for spam again. Whenever I try to promote my stuff and I don't even have any follow. So let's get started. So this came from Barack Obama late on Tuesday, and this is what I was going to start my show off with. Okay, now we got it right. So in this book, former President Obama lashed out at his successor at private fundraisers and events throughout both the 2016 and former President Trump's term in office, according to excerpts from a new book shared with The Guardian. The reported cutting remarks from Obama are detailed in Atlantic staff writer Edward Isaac Dover's forthcoming book, Battle for the Soul: Inside the Democrats' Campaign to Defeat Donald Trump. And let's just get down to the main quotes. The former president frequently slammed his successor over numerous issues, including telling his donors that Trump was a madman after 2017 when he took office. I didn't think we'd have a racist, sexist pig, Obama told Roan Group, also referred to Trump as that fucking lunatic and a corrupt motherfucker, according to Dover. The news follows reporting by New York Times, which revealed the 44th president had told supporters at an event that Trump was engaging in nativist, racist, sexist rhetoric. What he has unleashed and what he continues to try to tap into is the fears and anger and resentment of people who in some cases really are having a tough time and have seen their prospects or communities where they left declining, and Trump tries to tap into that and redirect in nativist, racist, sexist ways, Obama reportedly said in July. And that's pretty much it. And this is where I'm going to respond to that by saying that neoliberals like Barack Obama created the conditions where a guy like Donald Trump could step in and take over. When you let down the people in a way that Barack Obama did during his 2 terms in office, this is why everything's moving further to the right. We're progressing to more and more aggressive forms of fascism. And Donald Trump wasn't even that competent in pushing through the fascism. So a lot of it is him telling on himself. Because he ran a progressive campaign in 2008, the first time I could vote, and I regretfully fell for his message of hope and change. And what I feel worse about was falling for it again in 2012. You see, he not only won the election in 2008, he also got a supermajority in the House and in the Senate. And guess what they did? They sat on their hands the whole time, made excuses for the Republicans, then followed it up by honestly one of the worst midterm defeats that you'll see. Then he, from that point on, capitulated to Republicans, brought forward this thing called Obamacare, which was a Republican idea. The Heritage think tank, a conservative group, but with how partisan politics are in this country, not a single person voted Republican voted in favor of it. And back to the point of this article, this is what neoliberals like Barack Obama are designed to do. They're designed to get you to stay lasered in on just Republicans, only focus on their racism and the other discrimination they act in. And the effect of this is when you do this, he can sit back and tell you that he can't make any real change because of racist Republicans. When the fact is, racism isn't going away, and you can still win even if 20-30% of people are on the side of racism. But you'll get so hyper focused and play into their game that you'll be outraged until there are no more racist Republicans, which just isn't going to happen. And that's the unfortunate truth of the purpose that the neoliberals serve. And you have to call that out because Barack Obama is not for Black America, let alone anything good, remotely good in populism. In fact, he even said it just before he started office in 2008 that he can't be the president for Black Americans. And that's a problem that we continue to see with the Black politicians in high places in the, especially in the Democratic Party. They keep getting to these spots, but they don't improve conditions for their communities. Instead, they just carry out on the many of the same policies that their same white colleagues do. And that brings me to a good transition. I decided since Kwame Brown is been a going viral on social media this week, especially for attacking back at the national sports media like Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, Jamel Hill, Skip Bayless, for a lot of his critics, and Charlemagne the God. But I felt like this video right here was a good transition from this Obama article. And let's listen in. So even though I get the impression that Kwame Brown leans a bit right, yeah, at the end of the day, there's people on the right who can portray accurate criticisms of liberals and how it's counterproductive to any real progress in this country. And I felt like this tied into Barack Obama correctly because politicians like Obama are the ones who get you to fall into the fake woke trap. And that's the whole focus on racism fear mongered by Republicans when you still have the chance to get real things done if you shift it into a different direction. But that first part of the video was what stood out to me. Remember back when Ice Cube tried to push the contract for Black America? And how Democrats pretty much tried to shrug him off and told him to put off addressing anything for that. And while Republicans actually acknowledged him sooner, and that's the sad part because even when Kwame mentioned that phone bank, that person on the phone did the exact same thing to him, telling him that wait till after the election. And we can't have politicians that wait who want to be running the walking on eggshells campaign, then not even follow through on their few milquetoast promises. And I appreciate Kwame Brown is finally, I'm not sure if he's been going at it on social media for a while, but it's good starting to see him speak out on certain issues that affected him throughout his playing career. Because if you look at some of his other videos criticizing the national sports media, he makes a ton of good points there. Although back to the point of the fake wokeness, I don't think it's just black liberals who follow through on this. I think their impact has probably led to a greater amount of white people joining in suit on this. And probably that leads me into another transition is when the white people have joined in on it, they've probably made further inaccurate statements like labeling every Republican voter as a white supremacist. So in a way, I feel like white people have kind of gone along with what Kwame Brown was referring to in this video about how continuing to vote for the Democratic Party is counterproductive to getting real progress in this country. But at the same time, the white liberals have upped the level of fake wokeness, and that's why we are at the crossroads that we are today, where once again we're seeing the neoliberal, neoconservative members of the Democratic Party continuously fail to do anything for us. And I'm about to get into Joe Biden and the week of bad quotes that he's had. So let's start off with this one first. I hate when videos don't load correctly. All right, I don't think that video is going to finish. But the point of that video is Obama, the Joe Biden went into the out to Michigan on Tuesday to a car plant, and he was trying out a couple new cars, and it looked mostly like casual conversation. And then when a reporter steps in and asks him a serious question on Israel, he then makes a joke about running that person over. And the sad part is how all of these reporters laughed. And we know that mainstream media, if Donald Trump had did this anytime, this would be days of outrage. And they're always going to bring it back to talk about again in the future. And it shows how much of hypocrisy that happens in the mainstream media when, well, we've seen the vast majority of people in the mainstream media do in the in this Biden administration is constantly run cover for the guy. This is not what journalism is supposed to be. And the only people who are covering Joe Biden without real bias mainly exist on the left. I've got another journalism related story later, but look how little Joe Biden has actually had to come out and do a press briefing at the White House. He's been able to be quiet most of the time outside of pre-release quotes, some random videos, and tweets of him walking around hallways and doing nothing. Let's get into the other main video. Another video. Gotta get this video through. All right, I got to the important part of the video. Rashida Tlaib confronted Joe Biden about his plan to fund more Israeli weapons. And this is what you get from him in return. He not once, not but twice, messes up her name in a way that misgenders her. Rashid, does that mean the ball don't lie? At Biden's age, he's showing a lot of moments where he fumbles his way through speeches, and this is another moment where he placates a congresswoman. But at the end of the day, he's still going to follow through on the whole pro is on being pro Israel, and that's just the truth about him. And that's really what the Biden administration has been about to this point, and that's placating the people, well, especially progressives, in order to get them to not fight and follow through on real actions. And we've got an update from Jeff Stein, one of the only people in corporate media who tells you about the inner workings. Scoop: White House budget will not include key Biden campaign pledges, such as the public option, prescription drugs reform, or student debt relief, per sources. White House squarely focused on 4 trillion in jobs and infrastructure plus family plans. Next tweet. Biden administration officials had begun work to incorporate campaign proposals for the budget. White House decided budget will instead be no reflection of what has already been proposed. Jobs plan, family plan, discretionary spending increases. The president's budget will focus on advancing the historic legislative agenda he already put forward this year. The budget won't propose other new initiatives. So let's. All right. Joe Biden ran a very conservative campaign. In fact, more conservative than anyone except maybe Mike Bloomberg. And there were only a few small positive things to come from his platform. And you had a lot of people telling you about his platform as a reason to vote for him, like would be a promise. So let's break down those few better things. First off, he said he was going to offer the public option as an alternative to Medicare for all. Medicare for all who want it. While people, a lot of his voters weren't paying attention, he dropped the public option about 5 or 6 weeks before the election. See, this is why we have to, as people, act to the principles of using our own individual leverage against politicians. Because when they feel like they got your vote, they can renege on just about everything that they could possibly do. Then the other one, student debt relief. Even though there's some people on the left who have said that he's been on the record as offering 25 or even $50,000 as debt cancellation per person. I think a lot of people get mixed up on it because it was Chuck Schumer who has tried to pull President Biden more towards the right spot on this issue by getting people more relief. Joe has only been on the record as promising 10,000. That's it. And what's infuriating is he started off in office doing a few small executive orders trying to do a few of the things that happened in the Trump administration. But when it comes to when you try to tell him that he could cancel all student debt, all medical debt, enact Medicare for all just by the power of his own pen. He plays dumb and tells you that's not within my reach of power, or he acknowledges that, uh, I think it, well, it could be, I don't want it used against me in a bad way by Republicans. There's got to become a breaking point where you get people that start to use their power for good to the point where once Republicans take over again, that the public pressure will prevent them to counteracting that to their own interest. And that's the reason why they have not followed through on repealing the Affordable Care Act. And for as long as Roe versus Wade has been into power, that's the reason why they have never been able to follow through on repealing that either. And there's too often where Democrats refuse to use their power for good to counteract the Republican bad. And reasons like this is why you're going to see the House and Senate flip in the 2022 midterms is because of politicians like Barack Obama, Joe Biden. They sit back and make excuses of why they can't get their milquetoast policies through when they've had the opportunity to. Don't forget the $15 minimum wage. Joe Biden talked a really good talk, especially during that final debate with Donald Trump. Talk is cheap. That may have been one of his shining moments during the debate. But when it came time to walk the walk, they hid behind the parliamentarian. They allowed 8 Democrats to vote against the $15 minimum wage while refusing to make it a simple majority. It's one thing if you're going to lose the $15 minimum wage while not gaining a single Republican vote and having full solidarity of your party. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they refuse to get the whole party to fall in line. It's going to cost them. Let's get into what this focus sounds like. To me, it sounds like we got to force the people back to work for shitty wages. And one of the things they applaud themselves for is the amount of vaccinations that they have done up to this point. keep in mind that this only lasts, full vaccination only lasts 3 months. Then you're going to have another spike in coronavirus sometime in August or September. Then they're going to, then the Biden administration, which is by and large adopted right wing talking points in their response to COVID 19. They're going to largely ignore it, have people continue to work through outbreak because we are supposed to be beyond COVID 19. Probably try to force society to fight through it and push a lot of people into booster shots. And trust me, a lot less people who got both of these first two shots, or if you got the single Johnson and Johnson, people just aren't going to follow through in that small of increments to maintain vaccination. And at the end of the day, you're going to see the House and Senate flip, and it will be easier for Joe Biden to sit back, do even more or nothing, and use the good old Republican excuse that your favorite recent Democratic politicians like to use for their inaction. The neoliberals aren't the only reason for Democratic failures. And I'm about to show you a bill that just passed through the House yesterday, which is right up the squad's alley to step in and, oh, slightly out of order. We have to mention the whole, yesterday there was the ceasefire promise between Israel, Palestine, and Hamas. Didn't even last a day. Let's take a look at this video real quick. I I started to jump a bit out of order. Squad. Some squad members had introduced a motion to halt funding to Israel a day before this happened. And when you don't realize how this is all coordinated, this allowed a few squad members like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar to look good because they got to look like they opposed this, while the Biden administration had already planned to follow through on the ceasefire action. And guess what? That did not even last a whole day. Israelis, they're like the heel wrestler. They're always going to look to break the rules when the referee isn't looking. And you've got the United States running outside interference. There was a graph over the past couple of days which showed the Israel funding to American politicians. Guess who's at the top? It's the Joe Biden. Over $3.9 million funded Joe Biden. Thank you for the subscription, Miramax. Appreciate that. And people still are focused on the whole Russiagate. Israel's handpicked politician is the one who's president right now. And you want me to feel like Russia's the one that's meddling in our elections? You want me to feel like China is the one meddling in our elections? Since China is the right wing version of Russiagate? When the evidence is Israel arguably has done more, when you realize that the United States funds Israel's imperialism to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. The IDF, they get the same type of training that US police officers get. And what I've been saying is these issues are connected. If you can't get the United States to pull out of Israel, then you're not going to improve policing in any way, shape, or form. It's going to continue to be the liberal reformist bullshit that continues to make policing an even worse problem. In a bit, I've got another story related to this Israel and Palestine issue, but we got to get into the squad. Yesterday, this happened. This tweet's from Alec Karakatsanis. Thread: a major scandal is happening right this moment on the House floor. Mainstream Democrats are quietly trying to ram through a $1.9 billion budget increase to the Capitol Police, military, and Department of Homeland Security. Supposedly because January 6th showed that they need more funding. For those of you new to this, Of the many things that went wrong on January 6th, insufficient funding for Capitol Police and bloated military bureaucracy was not one of them. This is part of a long pattern. Police work with liberal reformers to use their own violence, waste, brutality, incompetence to justify increased budgets. All of the goodwill must speak out against the latest attempt by Democrats to waste money expanding state bureaucracy, violence, militarization, and surveillance. All these instruments will be turned against the most vulnerable people in our society. Then all 6 squad members were reportedly opposed to this. Update, devastating news. This dangerous bill passed 213 to 212 with AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Jamal Bowman abandoning their positions and voting present instead of against it, thus supporting giving cops more money and weapons to use against the most vulnerable people. All right. Moments like these were right up the squad's alley. They were supposed to be an instruction to the establishment, a hostile takeover was the original purpose of the Justice Democrats, as Kyle Kulinski would put it. Once again, the squad proves they do not have solidarity with the people that supported them and abandon what they ran on in their campaigns to get elected in the first place. We wanted them to vote as a block. When they do that, they do it for the wrong reason. In this moment, they were split squad. This ain't spring training. These were the moments you campaigned for. Cori Bush obviously got allowed to save face because defunding the police was a big part of her campaign in St. Louis. The worst part here is following the response to the Derek Chauvin verdict, Rashida Tlaib made a statement in favor of abolishing the police. Then she backtracks on that and votes present. When you stay neutral, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. That very much applies here. Part of the Force the Vote campaign was for the squad and their neighboring progressive allies to use their leverage to counteract against destructive democratic reformist bullshit and allowing it to pass through. The squad has shown they are useless once again. And what's frustrating about it is they play dumb to the tenets of force the vote when it matters, and they got an opportunity to use their leverage to counter against the bad within their own party. Then, when there's nothing at stake, they give y'all the wink wink, like they know, like they understand what we're asking them for. When it's time to walk the walk, they don't do it. There's people on the left who have been screaming for a long time. The Democratic Party is where progress goes to die. By and large, it is very true. And every moment that they have an opportunity to step up and live to their platform, they fold like an accordion. I've held off on calling them the fraud squad for a while. But when you're served up this layup, it's pretty fucking obvious that they're the fraud squad. And even though there's future progressives all over the country working to get elected through the Democratic Party, my message to them is you're going to have to prove us wrong. I'm not going to put my trust in you. You have to prove it with your actions. Then I'll give you a bit of credit. But until then, the reality is progressives answer to the Democratic Party. Until we work to get people from third parties in, they're not going to truly answer to us, the people. Let's get into this interesting tweet from earlier this morning from one of the other favorite anti-establishment Democrats, Tulsi Gabbard. Mayor Lightfoot's blatant anti-white racism is abhorrent. I call President Biden, Kamala Harris, and other leaders of our country of all races to join me in calling for Mayor Lightfoot's resignation. Our leaders must condemn all racism, including anti-white. So during the campaign, Tulsi Gabbard got a good portion of the left support because they felt Bernie Sanders was too co-opted by the Democratic Party. And one of their big selling points was the whole strongest anti-war messaging. Also, her political instincts have been all over the place. And Nick, Socialist MMA of the Fred Hampton leftist, he had the most accurate description of Tulsi Gabbard in the past. Tulsi Gabbard is a Bill Maher Democrat. And that's two of the most all over the place people you could have that still consider themselves liberals. And then let's get back to the core of this tweet, though. Mayor Lightfoot has been prioritizing voice media of people of color. The neoliberal mayor from Chicago. And that itself is positive because you need more representation. The point of this tweet, however, I felt it was a calling card to the white oppressionist. They're a brand of conservative who call themselves who tried to cry racism anytime we step up and call for equality. So Black Lives Matter, their response is, it's anti-white. The fuck it's not. Black Lives Matter is a movement of equality. And they always like to use the term of reverse racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. And from a systemic standpoint, white racism doesn't exist because white supremacy has all the power. So it is only possible right now to be prejudiced to white people. And keep in mind that Tulsi Gabbard had stood silent on what's been happening in Israel and Palestine. She comes out of the woodworks and pushes some culture war bullshit. Even though the progressives were right, though. They were the Moments like these prove that she's making a further shift to the right. Even though I've held off on making some strong declarative statements, when you feed into the white conservatives who cry oppression, in fact, fake oppression, you're trying to reach a new group of people. And even she has fell back on a lot of her campaign promises, like Andrew Yang. The only thing that she has is that she managed to get a couple delegates in the primary last. And the progressives may very well be right on this one, that she could be a surprise Republican candidate. And it's unfortunate to see her make this hard shift to the right because of how much she failed to gain traction during this last primary. Right, it's time to get into a new story related to Israel and Palestine. And we'll go to the Gravel Institute for this one. The AP fired a journalist for expressing support for Palestine in college. This is what cancel culture really is. Powerful right-wing groups pressuring any dissenting views out of media. And here's the snapshot from the email. A note to say that news associate Emily Wilder is no longer with the AP. We will try to fill the position as soon as possible. Thanks, Peter. Peter Pringaman is the U.S. West News Director. So a little backstory on Emily Wilder. She is a Jewish news associate that was part of a Palestine support group in college. And also, for full context, the AP just had one of their buildings hit by Israel over the course of their recent one-sided fight with the Palestinians. And we get told all the time that the AP is supposed to be one of the most unbiased sources for news. And they just caved to the same right-wingers who cry about cancel culture and gave them what they wanted by firing Emily Wilder. So I'm going to tell you that I was going to college for journalism. And one of the things that kind of made it harder for me to make further advancements was I still had to work full time. And when I see stuff like this happen, I'm glad I never got involved with the mainstream reporting. Hell, I'm even glad that I'm not part of mainstream sports because my purpose was to be part of sports journalism. I never thought that I would be covering politics for people like I am now. Over 5 years ago, things really changed for me. My dad passed away. Since then, I've grown into progressing to be more and more engaged in politics. Moments like these are why I'm glad that I've chosen the path I have now, and that's to be part of independent media on the left. I won't pretend to hide my biases as a leftist, but I'm also not going to allow it to cloud my judgment and provide some honest analysis when it comes to covering these topics. But I'm also not going to allow my analysis to become a bad opinion either. Back to the cancel culture now. This is the problem with the issue of cancel culture. Mainly who complain about it are the right, but they're the ones who benefit from it more because they are able to successfully make dividends meet when they get organizations like the AP cancel people on the left. And let's get back to when pretty much all of social media censored Donald Trump. And it was bad to see all these progressives cheering on censorship. And moments like these are why. Because it's always going to hurt the left more. And there's hardly any true principled people on free speech. Once again, I feel like the majority of the people who are really about free speech They lie on the left. Once in a while, you'll find that rare principled right winger when it comes to the issue of free speech. But the truth is, they by and large just show that they're hypocrites on the issue of free speech. They cry about cancel culture, but they enjoy it just about as much as liberals and progressives when it affects people that they don't like. And this is bad because you've got a lot of independent people out there who are trying to work against the algorithm of the big tech companies who make it hard for channels like mine, even people who have like 5,000 subscribers, from getting real growth. And we can't allow big tech to hide under the guise of being a private company. We must demand of them to be a public utility. And they should not get to determine who is and who isn't acceptable. That must be up to someone else. All right, I've got a local story. So this came yesterday from CBS 4 Denver. Or a police officer. I am leaving Colorado for less communism. And Aurora police officer Daniel Bertilson sent a department-wide email this month as he announced his retirement, offering some barbs and harsh assessments of the current climate for law enforcement. I'm leaving Colorado for palm trees and less communism, wrote Bertelson, who spent 16 years with the Aurora Police Department. Try to ignore the politicians and media. They know nothing of the profession of honor. They are self-serving con artists, well-dressed pimps, and prostitutes at best. The number of officers leaving APD has been increasing in recent years, jumping from more than 60% from 2019 to 2020. That comes as the city is also seeing rising crime rates, a trend seen in Colorado cities and across the country. Bertelson wrote that he had been honored to serve as an Aurora officer, thanked his colleagues for their advice, kind words, support, and friendship. As the war against police rages on in an environment where you can do no right, I pray for the safety, success, and happiness for each of you. Bertelson, who is assigned to the investigative support section, will officially leave the department June 1st, according to a public information officer. Never forget, you are all capable of incredible things in and out of law enforcement. Never lose faith in yourself. Hmm, Isn't it ridiculous how they you've got these conservatives, fascists, and they think that just a small, tiny measure of things that are left are communism. So Colorado is one of the only states, well, they're a, my state of Colorado is a full mail-in ballot state. The top participation rate for voting in the country. They have also neutralized redistricting. Well, we the voters have voted that. And independent committees to run elections. So even though Colorado, over the past couple elections, we've been voting right on a lot of issues like paid leave for families. One of the first few states to legalize sports betting. And several more measures like that. This is hardly a communist state. Keep in mind that Colorado can't even get progressives through for Senate or House. Let's be honest, the probably one of the most progressive people that are in Colorado are Leslie Herod and David Sirota's wife, Emily. Other than that, Colorado has hardly had the progress from a people standpoint that you've seen in states like New York and other places up a bit in Michigan and other parts of the Northeast. So it's ridiculous how conservatives have been propagandized into believing that even the previous guard of establishment Republican and Joe Biden is a communist. Oh. Back to the core point of the article. And that's the war against police rages on in an environment where you can really do no right. Colorado was the first state to end qualified immunity. And that happened right in the height of the George Floyd protest. And when you tell me The message that police officers send when they decide to leave is they don't want to be held accountable for what they do. And this following quote is a scare tactic. The positive is we got plenty of stories of voluntary defunding. But this is where they fearmonger you. The city is also seeing rising crime rates. And why it's a fearmonger attempt is police only solve 2% of crime. 2%. So the point here is it shouldn't matter how many police you've got, because it's not going to change rising crime rates. Especially when you realize the actual percentage of crime they prevent. They also fail to address the root cause of why crime happens. Crime doesn't happen because a large percentage of people who commit these are inherently bad people. No, it happens because their basic needs are failed to be met. If you take care of people's basic needs, it will decrease crime in a much more significant way than overfunding and overstaffing of police officers ever would. So, on a final note, good riddance to these police officers out there who think that we really care when you leave. Because at the end of the day, you're only proving you don't want to be, you only want to be further part of the problem and not part of the solution, which is much more transformative change than the liberal reformist actions, which only further enable the predatory policing that continues to keep Black and brown communities down in the same place that they have been. The voluntary destaffing is the start. Major cities all over the country, they've seen an average of, well, at least a few, of 5 to 10% budget cuts on the police. It's a start, but not anywhere close to where it needs to be. The next goal is to get this down to at least 50%. I will close with on this segment on defunding the police as the road to abolition. And abolition will make more sense once you see money pulled from from the police in order to fund the basic needs that will help improve society in other ways. The last story I'll cover today is it's on one of the top shit libs, Alyssa Milano. She apparently got upset yesterday that her congressperson, McClintock, was one of 63 Republicans to oppose the Asian hate crimes bill. This is my congressman. Should I run against him? My first initial thought is that if Alyssa Milano wants to take a self-inflicted L, I say let her go for it. I would enjoy seeing her lose in a pretty solid red district. Uh, let's look at this image that one of the top online comrades, Beth, responded to. This was last April. You can't tell the difference between Trump supporters and Bernie supporters in my replies right now. Cancel culture doesn't scare me. People have been trying to cancel me since the 80s. Keep showing your true colors. I'll be right here, where I've always been, fighting for you. Well, that's kind of funny, but the real problem with this is not the fact that she wants to run, it's the celebrity worship. I could click through all these quote tweets right now, and a good 95% of those are like, yes, 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 I will vote. I would vote for you. Do it. And it's and the reason why I say she should go for it is because celebrities like her need to be taken down a notch or two. And for her to throw millions of dollars into a likely losing campaign is probably the only means of a small measure of justice that she would get for these neoliberal celebrities who think they own society. And the fact that she was a true one of those celebrities who was the biggest one of the biggest enemies to the Bernie Sanders campaign. She was part of that blue check the blue check mark anti-Bernie coalition. So sum it up, go take that L for me, will you please? So that'll do it for the Rochford Files today. Well, let's take a look at the Patreon real quick. Here are my 3 membership levels. Casual fan, $2 per month. Bandwagoner, $5 per month. And Diehard for $10. Still waiting for my first patron to come through. Regardless of what content I put out, I always plan to make sure it will remain free. I do have a big interview in the middle of June next month with a psychology scholar. I will only have it, I will try to put it in an exclusive patron window, but it will eventually be free. And even with my goals of getting some more significant interviews down the line, exclusive window, it will stay free. It will eventually be. Whoa, that was weird. That was the first time I've seen my internet drop for just a few seconds. So I'm honestly not sure if I'll have a weekend stream at all. I'm leaning towards not doing a weekend stream this time around. Although next weekend, the following weekend leading into Memorial Day, I do plan to have a Saturday and Sunday stream. And for both those days, I will work on trying to get some actual guests for both those days. One of those may be a regular sports stream, but I think the other will just be more supplementary political content for you. So, with that being said, please like, share, and subscribe to the Rochford Files, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch. Please follow me at Nug Life Comrade on Twitter, as you see on the screen right now. And this is your host, Andrew Rochford of the Rochford Files, saying to have a good weekend and see y'all on Monday.